my name is Haley, and I'm the social worker here with Hope for HIE. Today, we're meeting to talk about epilepsy and HIE, and we have two panelists with us today. We have Dara and Susie. They are parents of a child navigating a journey with epilepsy and HIE. So, our hope with this video is that we can talk about just different ways to navigate that diagnosis and, ways to help support yourself, your child, and your family. And we're just going to kind of go over a multitude of different things, and hopefully this can be helpful to some families in the future as well. So first, we kind of want to talk about is what to do if you think your child is having a seizure. So some of the things we've talked about are just to make sure you have a plan for your family and you have a plan for your child to use those first aid steps, such as securing the area, roll your child to the side until the seizure stops. Try to record the seizure if you can and send it to your provider. And then to contact your provider, whether that's your epileptologist, your neurologist, or your pediatrician if you don't have a specialist. And one of the other things that we recommend is going to epilepsy.com. They do have some first aid information and ways to, help you manage epilepsy with your child. And Dara or Susie, what more information do you want to add about that?
So for first aid, the if it's your child's first seizure, you may want to, call 911 or take them into, a urgent care or ER or something. At least to make yourself feel better. If it's just a few seconds and then it's over. Definitely recording it is very, very, very valuable to the providers, maybe multiple providers in the beginning, and then writing down a seizure action plan for any sitters um, or schools or anything like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely having the seizure action plan is very helpful to not have to think through the steps that you want to, in the moment. It's just helpful to think about those things before it happens or in preparation for it happening. So it's a little less chaotic in the moment.
Thank you both for sharing. The next thing we wanted to talk about is just being aware of a later onset diagnosis of epilepsy. Not all children, especially in our HIE community, are getting that diagnosis in those early months or early years. So some of the things we've talked about are just how children can develop epilepsy at any age or at any stage. So just to be aware, if you're seeing something that you're not sure, definitely record that or reach out to someone, or like Dara said, head to your local doctor or hospital just to get some more information. And one of the highest risk factors are children who have had neonatal seizures. And just be aware of signs and symptoms that your doctor's gone over with you, so that if you see any of those, you have a plan, kind of like Susie and Dara have explained, and what to do and how to look for those signs and symptoms, so that way you can keep an eye on things. And then the most common later onset epilepsy usually happens at the sleep wake cycle. And so that can sometimes be like at night, or if your child falls asleep in the car. So those are times just to maybe be a little bit more aware that that's a more often opportunity when a seizure may happen. Dara or Susie, what did you want to add about that?
So for us, it can also be during an activity switch. So he often has them during mealtime. I don't know if he's just very excited about food or what the factor is. And my son's baseline is 3 to 6 seizures a day. And that's his current breakthrough, and has been for many years. That's where they're comfortable with his levels and activity. So that's where we see them most, is definitely in that sleep wake cycle, or sometimes in those activity switches. And I forgot my second point.
No problem.
Yeah, and for us there, they're more infrequent, but we just never know when they're coming. And for us, they've changed, all of our seizures have changed a lot over the years. So I would say just to always be aware that there could be a different presentation of epilepsy showing up. You know, it might have looked one way for a year or once, and then those never come back, and then a different kind comes. So yeah, I would say just to be on alert for changing conditions, you know,
Thank you. Those are
especially if
great.
they're
Yeah. I think it's also important to add, I've had some friends with children with seizures, both in the HIE community and not in the HIE community. And um, sometimes it's easy to brush off something that is standing out to a parent. So just kind of trust your parental intuition, take those videos, keep investigating. If you have a hunch it's your child and there's a likelihood that you're right, and that you might take more than one person to show or investigate.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. When Oliver first started having his seizures, he was 5 months old, and it took me 2 full months of asking doctors, taking videos, sending them. No one believed me, and he was up to like 50 a day by the time someone actually believed me. So I fully agree. Definitely keep pushing if you feel like something is not right.
Thank you both for sharing that. And that leads us straight into this next topic of how to find that emotional and community support while you're navigating an epilepsy diagnosis. And some of the things, that are a great way to start finding that support are to follow up with some of the staff at the hospital, such as the social worker, the child life specialist, or the palliative care team. Those are people who are going to be open to, hearing your story, hearing your child's journey, advocating for you in the hospital, helping you, try to get that information to those providers. So please utilize those people on your healthcare team if you're in that position where you're in the hospital and you're trying to get more information and you're trying to navigate, how to manage an epilepsy diagnosis and a hospital stay. And another way is just to utilize the Hope for HIE community. We have over 8,000 families in our main Facebook group, and they're there to support you, and it's families just like Dara and Susie's where they're navigating journeys as well. And feel free to use the search feature for more information or ask questions. Dara and Susie, do y'all want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, reaching out to Hope for HIE has been really has been like a major support group for me through almost his entire journey. My son's 9.5. I'm not sure. I know, Max is just a little older than Frank. So I think we're almost like, within the first year or so of HIE coming to be. But it's, I've had personal interactions with Betsy, and I don't think that that's unusual. So this support group has really, really touched me, and it has sound information, not just, I don't know, not like some moms groups that can be very bickery or or get into, different information. So there's always a way to find, I think, someone here, hopefully for everyone. And maybe you need that bickery type, and that might be something that you need to be in that headspace for a little while, and that's really good too and valid. And then I also even found support in our insurance company. We had somebody in our insurance company that was like a coordinator, and she would call every couple weeks or a month. And during that diagnosis stage, around year 2, when we were still investigating stuff and meeting new providers, and um, it was very isolating. And so even having this random insurance person who it's her job, but just her calling every few weeks to check in was like really helpful for my mental health. So you might find support in places you're not expecting.
Yeah, for me too, Hope for HIE has been a really big support throughout our journey. For me, it's it's more just the interpersonal relationships that I've been able to build, like, on social media and stuff, just helping me feel not so alone, because it is a really overwhelming diagnosis, and you tend to have to live in this unknown. You never know when it's coming. It's always this looming threat. So it's a difficult diagnosis to learn to live with. So for me, the having other real life people in the world that are going through it has been really helpful. And then, yeah, the palliative teams that we've worked with over the years have been like our angels within the medical system. So I pretty much always recommend to families to get in touch with them, because they're just really focused on quality of life for the whole family unit and learning to live, in this unknown, and like figure out ways for your family to thrive, with a difficult diagnosis. And then they can be like a go-between for the families and the medical providers, which I feel like, especially in epilepsy, it's sometimes very hard to get people to listen to you and believe you. And so I've felt a lot of support over the years, with the palliative team being the bridge between our family and the medical providers too.
Thank you both for sharing that. And one of the things that I know we talked about in our meetings when we were gathering information for this, and I've talked with other families, is just how this and many of the journeys everyone feels with HIE, that it's a marathon journey and not a sprint. And so just to remember the importance of caring for yourself, your relationships, taking that time when you can, even if it's just 2 minutes or 5 minutes. And some of the things that we talked about, just kind of reminding the importance of taking breaks when you're at the hospital. It is okay to say, hey, I need 5 or 10 minutes away from the room. Talk with the nurse, talk with the staff, and find out how that hospital system works. If you need to step away, even if you're just going outside to get some fresh air for 5 or 10 minutes, or even if you're just walking the halls of the hospital, being in the hospital room for days and for hours on end and speaking with multiple providers and team members, it's very overwhelming. And so it is important to, whatever you can do in that hospital space, to give yourself some sense of, a break from what's going on, because it is a 24-hour cycle. There is no time where you're not there. If you're being the caregiver to your child who's inpatient. So just finding those little ways, or going to those activities if your child's able to, that the hospital offers. At a lot of the children's hospitals, they have activities, they have therapy dogs. So just, utilizing those services, if that's something that you're able to do and your hospital does offer that. And just to reach out when you need support, whether that's at the Hope for HIE Facebook groups, whether you utilize our peer mentor team and you reach out and say, hey, I'd like a peer mentor, or whether that's, your family members, your friends, your community, whatever that looks like for you, reaching out and getting that support. And just remembering that each hospital stay, each doctor's visit, each interaction may look different. So giving yourself some sense of, you're not really going to know exactly what to expect. And sometimes things will go a certain direction, and hopefully that will be helpful. But when they don't, that everyone navigating this epilepsy journey has felt those feelings before too.
Yeah, and I would extend that also to outpatient life, when you're just living with the diagnosis and that the seizure is always possible. It can feel really limiting for your life when you first get the diagnosis, because you're just like, oh, we always have to be near a hospital. There's a lot of fear that comes up, at least for me, in those first couple years. And I think that over time you learn how to live with that constant threat. You learn how to manage the seizures better on your own, and you start to be able to get out and live your life again, which I think is a really important place to be for your mental health ultimately, because it is a marathon, and it's not something that has a finite end to it. So you have to learn to live again without that crushing fear, I guess. So for our family, it's been helpful to have the seizure plan, have the palliative care teams to talk through the decisions that we make with Oliver and try to figure out ways that we can still be out in the world and go hiking and do all the things, that our family loves to do. And, while Oliver lives with this diagnosis.
Yeah, I think definitely calling it a marathon is the the best way to describe it. It is just, hills and valleys. You have these long spurts of time where you might be like, I'm figuring this out. And then all of a sudden you'll get hit with an emotion, whether it's triggered by an event or a seizure, or it's just your own emotion coming up. And, um, you know, I think it's important to not be afraid to ask for help. There's so much virtual mental health available now, which I think is amazing because some people don't have the sitter or don't have the car, or there's so many different scenarios. So I think that's so amazing. At different points I've needed professional counseling and work through the trauma that we sometimes experience in this journey. And then there's also times where you feel amazing and you might continue on or you might not, but it's all ebbs and flows, and that's natural, and you don't have to feel like um self-conscious about returning to this place. And even my husband and we were both having a lot of anxiety a couple of years ago and weren't discussing it, and we finally broke and somebody was like, I'm so afraid of this, and like, me too, like couldn't breathe level afraid of this, these scenarios that run through our minds. And it was like, why didn't we say anything sooner? So it's hard to open up sometimes, even to the people you're closest with, and just try. Just try and, find someone to open up with. And then, you know, also I had some really good advice in the NICU, when we were still in the NICU, that was just like, you're still a new parent, you're still a new mom. Enjoy this baby, enjoy this child, hug them, love them. Um, I spoke at a mom's panel um with our church before, and there's so many things that can be challenging, but my son is non-mobile, and at the time he was a little bit younger, but I was like, you can't catch your 5-year-old, and I can snuggle mine whenever I want. So there's these like great loving moments that we get to have as a family, and great things that he adds to his siblings' lives. And finding ways to live, like Susie said, is so amazing. Like, one of the places we really enjoy is Disney, and how accessible it is for our family and for every member of our family to have the same experience. And so we're really, really lucky to get to do that. And Susie said hiking, and that is something that, I love being out in nature, but it does take a little bit of planning for my son. But if you do just pause a second and take a baby step and maybe go to a park a little longer or a nature trail or something, then it's going to be so rewarding, and it will do so much for your mental health.
Yeah, I can't agree enough with what you said, Dara, about just having those hard conversations with your partner or the people that are closest to you, and kind of normalizing the thoughts that are in your head, the fears, because epilepsy is a really overwhelming diagnosis. It can be, and it's there's a lot of fear and a lot of difficult decisions that come up and things that need to be acknowledged. And um, the more that you can open up about that and just realize that, the people who are closest to you are also thinking that. And just, I think it frees you a little bit, because I think as moms, we have so much guilt, like, oh, I shouldn't be thinking that. Oh, I shouldn't be, my mind shouldn't be going there. And it's like, it really is normal to have all those fears and anxieties and everything. And, I think when we can come together and talk about those things openly, it helps kind of free us from those a little bit, the trappings of our mind. So yeah, my partner and I have had long, many conversations, particularly around the nocturnal seizures that Oliver has, because we never know when they're coming. And it's just kind of luck that we have always caught them, and there have been some close calls, and it's like stuff like that really weighs on you over the years. You do accumulate trauma and kind of baggage. So yeah, as much as you can open up and flesh that all out, I think that it's a positive thing ultimately for the marathon.
And we have a ton of support at Hope for HIE. You can feel free to email me. My email is Haley, HALEY, at Hope for HIE. We have a child life specialist who's also a certified grief counselor. She does a ton of work with working with your child. If your child is, having difficulty with their meds, or your child's having difficulty with their doctor's appointments and things like that, she helps with that. She helps with sibling support to provide support to other children in the family, navigating having a sibling with, medical needs. And we just want you to reach out. We have multiple support groups every month. We usually try to have between 3 and 5. And so we just want there to be as many places as possible for you to know that if you are struggling or you are feeling, lonely or isolated, please reach out, because we want to connect you with other families navigating a similar journey. Every family's journey is completely their own and unique, but there are a lot of things that all of our families in the HIE community, can coexist and feel similar to and have overlapping experiences. And so that's our goal, is to just connect you with other families so that you don't feel as alone, and that you are able to talk to someone, and you're able to share that experience, and someone to say, oh, me too, I felt that way, or oh, this happened with my child and this is how we navigated that, so that you're not at home by yourself, wondering where to find that support. We want to make sure that you know that it's available. And we also talked about just living in that unknown and kind of being in that space of where, you don't exactly know when the next seizure is coming, or what's going to happen next, or what the, epileptologist or neurologist is going to say. And some of the things we had talked about are just parent guilt, the fear of the what ifs, and how to get back to living. And I know y'all touched on, getting back to living, but is there anything y'all want to add about like how you got back to that place and how you managed the what ifs and the parent guilt?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's kind of like living with grief if you've lost someone. It's not that it's, ever gonna just be gone away. But it is, just I think in practice, you can really, see those moments of joy every single day. I mean, even in some of our hospital stays where we've had some serious respiratory concerns and things, it- um, you know, my son is always so joyful. So we have, it's a really common thread through many of our hospital stays. Like the nurses like being in our room. They like the joy that he emits. And, um, so even in hard situations, I think you do have to seek out those moments of joy. It might sound contrite, but it's been, I think, what carries us through this journey. And we did touch on the hospital stays, and I forgot to add, it might be wise to get a hospital go bag together. Um, that way, even if you have a planned EEG, you have something set aside and it's not one more burden on your back for last minute packing, but some things you might need, like a charger or um for me, scent is so big in my memory and good memory or trauma memory. So things like adding in scented hand soap instead of having to smell that sterile hospital soap is like a really big deal to me. I even did it with my my HIE child is my first. Um, so I did it with my future births as well, with my second and my third child, because I'm like, I cannot smell that sterile smell and the hospital rubber and things like that. So just kind of if you take a little bit of time or set a little bit of money aside, it doesn't have to be a lot for a phone charger and something for you or with those little walks at the hospital. I didn't know about them until a nurse was like, "Would you like to take a walk today?" And um, financially things have been tough in different times, so it was a big deal, but just even going to the gift shop and getting a hand lotion and just even, that 5-minute walk and then going back and be able to like give myself a hand or a foot massage in the hospital or use it on him also. And that's just some ways to kind of care for yourself and move forward. Um, we are a Christian family, so faith is important to us, and that's one way that we kind of carry through our journey as well, and it helps us. And so I don't know if those are some of the things that I would suggest to families.
Yeah, I agree with just doing your best to find the beauty or find the joy in the moments that you can, even in the midst of, incredible hardship, which I feel like is also an important self-care aspect, is like acknowledging that sometimes are just going to be really hard and really dark, and like you might go into depression, or you might have a harder time finding the beauty in things, or you might have to set aside the things that you love for a while to get through those hard spells of their epilepsy. And that's okay. It's an ever-changing diagnosis, and learning to flow with the hills and valleys, like you said, Dara, is it's a skill that you gain over the years. And I think that remembering that, no matter how hard you try to control and manage epilepsy, and no matter how many meds you are and how stable you think you are, it's an ever-changing diagnosis, or it can be. And like, it's not, I think a lot of us feel like, I'm not doing well enough, I'm not doing the right thing, the seizures aren't stopping. And it's like, I think remembering that you are doing everything that you can, that it just is a very volatile diagnosis. And like, sometimes there are going to be rough patches, that you just have to kind of buckle down and get through. And then like, when those hard times lift and it, like, the sun comes out again, you can really, for me, it's like, that's a really beautiful reminder of like, the joys in life when we go through a really hard spell and then it opens up again. And it's like, oh, okay, we can go out again. We can dig ourselves out, and go, live to the best of our ability. And like Dara said, there might be accommodations needed. Like, maybe you can't go hiking, but you can go to a park, and maybe you can't go to a park, but you can go to your backyard. And I think finding those workarounds has been a huge part of our self-care as a family, like to find just ways to, keep living. So yeah, it's a couple things.
Thank you both so much for sharing. I know that we talked a lot about that in our meetings, just about how sometimes there is no answer to, like, you're navigating epilepsy and, you're trying different meds or you're trying different things, or, wherever you are, whether you're home, the hospital, a clinic. And I think just finding the way to not necessarily be at peace with that, but with just be able to kind of sit in that uncomfortable state because there are going to be those times, especially with the diagnosis of epilepsy, where they just may not be able to give you answers, or, the meds may not be working the way that they thought they would be working. And so just being able to find a way to deal with that and being in that uncomfortable place, because unfortunately, sometimes we don't know how long we're going to be in that space. And so that's why we wanted to talk a lot today about mental health and about, navigating these spaces, because this journey is going to look different for every family, and making sure for your family that you're able to navigate it the best you can and stay with the support that you need is really important. So the last thing we're going to talk about before we open up for questions is just, what are some ways that y'all are able to prioritize your mental health, or what are some things that worked for you? I know we talked about, finding or building some sort of support network, different hobbies. I know, Dara talked about therapy and mental health care and utilizing those resources, and then also support groups. We have tons of virtual support groups here at Hope for HIE. So it is a great place to start if you're just not really sure what you need. So Susie or Dara, anything else y'all want to add to that?
Yeah, I think hobbies are really important. I know for me, I'm an artist at the core, so my art has varied very much throughout the years. So, right now I have really young elementary school children. One thing I love to do is paint. I'm not painting right now. If I take out paints, that means I have to make everybody else paint, and then that means I have to clean it up. So I do homeschool, so also like we obviously do art and stuff, but I mean that time away from me isn't happening right now. So I've had to adjust and do some more digital art, which is still, creative time for me. I also do hair. And I've moved that to the side as I've become like a full-time, caregiver for my family. So doing some side jobs for me is huge. I get the socializing, I get to speak to, adults and and also use my art and fulfill that inside of me. Um, parents that I've met through school, even if their kids have different diagnoses, that is I've gotten to know them and see some of the things that they love. One of them loves reading, and that's a really good place for her to do some self-care. And then I mean, anybody could do anything. Someone might find that physical activity is, really, really valuable to them, or somebody might find, you know, just getting in the shower every day is where they need to be right now. And there's definitely been periods of time where self-care meant brushing my teeth and taking a shower. And that's okay if that's the step you're at. Be forgiving to yourself and, you know, do do what you need to do to get into a space that is healing for you, and then livable for you, and then happy for you. You can transition into all of it. So, you know, I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with everything that she said. Particularly the part about, I mean, self-care can be anything that makes you feel good about yourself, but for me, it's been a journey of not beating myself up when I can't do my self-care, and like letting go of that shame and judgment, because like she said, there's going to be times when your self-care is just bathing, like, and that feels really good, and like that's all you can give yourself, and that's okay. Like sometimes you'll go through periods, or I go through periods, where Netflix is my self-care, because it can take my mind away from the reality, the very difficult reality that we're facing, and like it's not the most conscious way to deal with it. Maybe the yoga would be better or whatever, but like in that moment, I need to survive that moment. And sometimes like allowing yourself to do the things that aren't, picture perfect, or like, typically thought of as self-care, that's just how you get through it. And I think that removing that shame and judgment, that's at least been a big part of my journey. So yeah, it's a constant ebb and flow.
I love that. And we're gonna kind of close out and then open up for questions, but I just want to thank both Dara and Susie so much for taking the time out of their day over the last few weeks and few months just to meet with me and kind of talk about their journey with epilepsy and HIE so that we can share this with other families, because our goal at Hope for HIE is to be able to be a safe space for families to find support and to get questions answered and to make sure they're caring for themselves and just all the things that come with getting a diagnosis and then additional diagnoses for your child. So I just want to close out with, please reach out. HIE.support is our main website. We have tons of information about all kinds of supports there. My email is Haley, HALEY at Hope for HIE. Please, reach out. And if you ever are needing urgent mental health care, please, if you're in the United States, reach out to 988. But I'm going to go ahead and close this and open it up for questions. And I'm just so thankful for both of you for being willing to share your journey with us.